This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And Doc, as you know, one of our fine partners at the DSP Network is The Athletic. And The Athletic Detroit specifically is premium, hugely premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. And listeners of this very episode of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company can save 30% on the first year of an annual subscription to The Athletic today by visiting theathletic.com/DSP. And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I'm your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner and fun. That is Doc from Doc and Jack, John Charles McElroon. John, how are you doing?
Vito, welcome to the week. Obviously, we recorded Motor City Sports Rant. I enjoyed talking Lions with you. Got a chance to vent. Now we get a chance to talk baseball, check in with the Detroit Tigers. The season's winding down. Still some things to talk about. I'm excited. You're going to cover the last couple games of this homestand versus the Kansas City Royals. I'm going to take in my final two games, Tuesday and Wednesday of the season. And after that, I would have covered basically maybe 13, 14 games, you maybe 5 or 6. And so we covered 2 out of every 3 games like the goal was, and I'm very proud of the work that we did. We busted our butts, we got some audio, we got some access, and we're continuing to learn and grow being reporters. But you saw on Twitter, on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, and I'm going to reach down here and I'm going to get your live reaction because I told you, Vito, when you have support, when you have people that you want to invest in, I wanted to have you have access to a microphone, take it out there, and now that you're a man on the street, I said, okay, I'm going to reach down, and here it is, Vito.
Look at that. Beautiful.
The DSP Network staff microphone. I want this to be used when we're out and about, so we are legitimate. Everybody that's a real outlet has one, and this is a fine tool. So your big black mic now has protection.
Now it's white protection, too. A little bit of a mix there.
What do you think, Vito? Good.
I like it. It looks solid, man.
Good stuff.
I have something else to say. I probably won't say about what it looks or what it reminds me of a little bit of. But anyways, I like the look. I like the flag, the logo. I mean, this logo is really cool on here too, isn't it?
Yeah.
The white and black mix, and it meshes really well, man, with the mic.
Props to Adam. He designed it. He designed the logo up here that's on our wall here. So it's really cool. It's an opportunity for us to showcase what we're about. And like I said on our Twitter page, if you have something interesting to say, we want to hear it. And so I think we're taking it to the next level. We want to go out and get some interviews, and we don't have to have people come here. We can go out if time allots to go out and get some interviews. So that's what I want to do in the coming months is to just say, hey, we'd love to have a conversation. Take your big black mic and
I like it.
handle
it's
your business.
Thick. It's thick now, too, with this flag, isn't it? Nice and thick.
What'd you think about the Tigers week? A series victory versus the Indians. I thought, okay, you know what? They played competitive. That Saturday contest, though, what do you make of games like that? It's always funny when you sit down to watch a baseball game and you're excited to see Michael Fulmer, and all of a sudden, back-to-back home runs, and he leaves the game with an apparent injury. It was discovered that he might have an issue with his knee, might have a torn meniscus. He's getting a second opinion. But that contest, when you get whooped 15-0, it's so interesting because it's like, you know, it's one of those things where the manager goes, okay, just go have a beer, turn the page, we'll come back. And they did. They were able to come back on Sunday and win the series. But what do you make of games like that when it's just a pure blowout? Do you like them? Do you like to see teams like put up crooked numbers against another team, a lot of runs? Sometimes it is against, the home team, but 15-0 in a baseball game is usually an outlier. What did you make of that contest?
Well, the low light in a season full of many low lights from Ron Gardenhire and company. And I love this quote after the game. I'm going to get to that in a second. But as part of Vito's notebook, releasing it early, a stat here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. And you look at this stat here, Doc. The Tigers' 15-0 loss Saturday was the low light, as I said, of the Tigers' 2018 campaign in terms of the worst loss run differential-wise for the Tigers this season. Also, it marked the Tigers' worst loss when it comes to run differential since losing by 16, 20-4 to the Boston Red Sox on September 4th of 2013. So on my dad's birthday in 2013, by the way, guys, the Tigers lost 20-4 to the Boston Red Sox, a team that they ended up losing to in the ALCS of 2013. So, in the Tigers starting pitcher that day, by the way, back in September 4th of 2013, was Rick Porcello, now a right-hander in the Boston Red Sox starting rotation. So, how about that right there, Doc?
Yeah, it was one of those weird games where you go, okay, Tigers are getting whooped. There's other things going on, obviously, with the Michigan game. Obviously, everyone was paying attention to college football, and there was so much going on this weekend that it just was a blip on the radar. But the key talking point from the weekend, obviously, Michael Fulmer leaves the game, only gets through 5 pitches, and it was tough because he gave up back-to-back home runs, put the team behind. But it leads to the conversation that Adam and I have had, you and I have had. Will Avila regret, maybe one of his biggest regrets that he might have being the general manager of the Tigers, not trading Michael Fulmer at his peak? Because you said it prior to the season, he's probably going to struggle years 2 and 3. He's a guy that's, has stuff, but has yet to develop that consistency year after year where you can say, every year we predict him to have 15 to 17 wins, and this year was an odd year in that he didn't have the major catastrophic injury, but he had a series of minor injuries that have kept him out 10 days, a month, here and there. But this latest one, is Michael Fulmer injury prone, and will Avila really regret not getting a haul? Because at the time, in the offseason, I believe in 2017, there was a chance that you could have let go of Michael Fulmer and gotten a decent price back. Now you can't.
Well, the thing is, so the MRI at Michael Fulmer's knee, it revealed damage to his meniscus. So Gardenhire said that, and Dr. James Andrews, the doctor of death when it comes to pitchers and pitchers' injuries, is currently reviewing results. So when he's involved in the mix, well, guess what? Doesn't mean a lot of good stuff for the pitcher and his health to come. So I'm scared for Fulmer, his long-term health at this point, because he's had the nagging injuries, and now with his knee, and it's scary thinking of what the Tigers could have had in a deal for him at one point, Doc, and what they could potentially get now this offseason or next year or 2 years from now. It might not be nearly as close of a great package and great haul of prospects as it once could have been, when it could have been top-tier prospects and a middle-tier prospect or two thrown into the deal. And we know it's not a huge seller's market as much as it used to be. It's more of a buyer's market because these buyers can buy on the cheap now and get these top-tier major leaguers for cheaper than they used to. But still, I think Fulmer, a year and a half, 2 years ago, could have allowed you to get a great return and much better return and haul of prospects than you can get for him now. And because of his poor season, too, on the field. Not only injury-prone maybe he has become, and he's still young. He's a young dude, but he's injury-prone, and his season stunk. Look at his ERA. Look at his FIP, both above 4. This is the guy that was supposed to be the ace of your pitching staff without Justin Verlander. And guess what he became in 2018? A 4th or 5th starter. That's not good out of a guy that was projected to be your ace of the future. And now what is he? Best case scenario, a middle-of-the-rotation guy? Or maybe one day he resumes full health and he resumes his ace capabilities and top of the rotation dominance. But right now, he is a middle of the rotation guy for me moving forward, Doc. And that's not good. And that means when you try to trade him the next time around, you're going to get less for him in return. And that means, yeah, maybe you can say right now that Avila did mess up by not trading him when he could have, Doc.
100%. I feel like his value diminished, and right now you have to keep him. There is no chance, I think, that a team right now, based on what he's shown, is going to take a flyer on Michael Fulmer.
Well, I think taking a flyer, yes, but the Tigers would not get enough in return to deal.
Right, exactly. They're going to lowball Avila, and I think he's worth more pitching for the Detroit Tigers than he is going somewhere else. You just got to ride it out, and hopefully that Avila surrounds him with more talent. They won the series versus Cleveland. Very interesting stuff. Obviously that second game they didn't perform well, but they come back and they did the job. Shane Green, when people have looked at it, has been a little bit rocky in terms of the smoothness of his ninth innings, but he's getting the saves. So that's okay. It's a little bit bumpy, putting runners on base, situational hitting, allowing guys on base, making it a little bit harder for himself. But overall, Shane Green's done a decent job. Hasn't been, super stellar, but serviceable, I would say.
And some of us like it bumpy anyways.
Yeah.
Also, so I wanted to get back to this. So they lost 15-0 on Saturday. Ron Gardenhire said after that loss, a really great quote, I think. It's one loss, so grab a beer, wrap it around your lips, and we'll come back tomorrow. That's what I'm going to do. Watch football and forget about this one. I hope they do, too. That was pretty interesting, that quote. And he gave a quote like that earlier in the season, too. And I love that out of Ron Gardenhire. And he defeats Brad Ausmus head-to-head just with that quote. Ausmus was never fun-loving. He wasn't endearing. He didn't have that kind of personality. Ron Gardenhire definitely has that, an attractive personality that you can gravitate towards. Brad Ausmus never delivered that and featured that with his personality and as a Tigers skipper specifically. And there's another reason why Brad Ausmus had his detractors and why I think Gardenhire has gained some love from the Tigers faithful.
Now, Vito, you would argue that in your time covering sports, you realize that the media pressure on these managers, on these head coaches, general managers, is really intense.
Yes, it is.
It's really hard to work in the field of sports because you got scrutiny, you got podcasters, bloggers, beat writers that are tasked with being around the team and asking the tough questions day in and day out. But in the world of sports, I feel like in 2018, there was no person that had the easiest job than Ron Gardenhire. Why? There was no expectation. Everybody picked this team to lose well over 100 games. I mean, the only thing that had to happen for Ron Gardenhire was to put out a team that looked like it was trying, a team that would not throw the ball all over the field, that looked like it was organized and would not give up. So with that said, I feel like Ron Gardenhire, in terms of what he was able to accomplish, definitely did a good job. I mean, I think this team is moving in the right direction, at least in terms of evaluation. I do believe they are sensing who they want to kind of piece together at certain spots. The problem is the talent. Obviously, there's not enough talent to sustain winning, but Ron Gardenhire had the easiest job, I think, in all of sports because there's no expectation, no pressure. Ownership's not going to fire him after year one. They only have around 62, 63 wins, and they have over 80 losses, and everyone's kind of like, oh, we like Ron, we like Gardy, we like this guy, and things like that. But at some point, I would like to see some sign of somebody coming up. I mean, Christin Stewart's been okay. You're starting to see some of the relievers come up. But the thing that is kind of noticeable for anybody watching is that the Tigers failed in an epic way to develop the minor league system in terms of everyday players. There's not a plethora of guys. I mean, you develop the arms, you develop starters, but everybody that messages us will say, hey, you know what? What's going on with that bullpen? How's the starting rotation going to look? There's still some question marks, but you have potential at the starter position, but everybody's looking and going, well, when you look at guys that can play every day, first base, second base, shortstop, third base, in the outfield, everyday players, it's a little bit concerning and a little bit causing me to have, when I look at the prospects and what they're doing. Now, there's some guys that could potentially make it to the majors and be productive, but when you look at it, the lack of talent situationally, but when you look at it, the lack of talent in terms of everyday positional players, you might have to peek at that.
But, Doc, it's been that way for a long time, man. So,
well, this is the first year I
you
peeked
just
at
woke
it.
up. I was about to say, you just woke up and noticed this. They hadn't developed a top-tier positional player prospect that went to the majors and did something in the major league level since Curtis Granderson, prior to Nick Castellanos coming on this season and maybe last year too a little bit down the stretch.
So the last 2 years, why not?
Granderson,
why not?
Castellanos, and that's it really of positional players
why?
that they've developed.
Why has this been neglected? Why is it happening?
Well, they were winning for a long time, remember, too. The 4th straight division title, they didn't really emphasize the farm system and growing it and having players grow from within and become major leaguers and, well, stud major leaguers potentially, like Nick Castellanos maybe is becoming that, or at least a guy that can be the 3rd best hitter, maybe 2nd best hitter on your ball club. So they've really not focused their resources on that for a long, long time. And that hasn't been a major priority subsequently. And now it's hurt them. It's come back to haunt them and bite them in the behind hugely. And look at their lack of positional player prospects now. It is big time of a void. It's a huge void right now for the Tigers in their farm system, Doc.
It's like a minor league system full of Ronnie Rodriguez's. All of them.
Crummy middle infielders that can't hit to save their lives. Barely can even field. They're not even Jose Iglesias with the glove. You're not even getting a Jose Iglesias from those positional players that are middle infielders like Ronnie Rodriguez, Dixon Machado of the past. Those guys are 4A players at best. At best, Doc. So you need guys to come up that are the Daz Camerons, Isaac Paredes, that shine at the major league level one day, and hopefully they get that with those guys and some other guys that they draft and develop.
Do you feel like, you know what, with the potential of earning a top 10 pick again this year in the Major League Baseball draft, that there's an opportunity now to emphasize that, maybe the bullpen and everyday positional players? Is it hard to find? Is it hard to survey the landscape and get guys? Because obviously, all these prospects that people are talking about, you need a couple of them to hit and produce on an everyday level. It's really hard because you got to produce in the minors, you got to work your way through a system, and then when you get called up, it's something completely different with what these pitchers are able to do nowadays in terms of their efficiency getting guys out. And it's going to be interesting to see what Avila does and who makes. I'm kind of fascinated now to kind of fast forward to March and April and see kind of who gets invited, who does what in spring training, and who's going to make the 2019 Detroit Tigers. I can't wait for the time when the Tigers start the season next year, because we'll be in the mix, and I can't wait to have some conversations with you regarding who emerges and who can produce. But those that have been called up, Lugo, you see Christin Stewart. What have you made of them so far? Have any of them done anything to make you go, oh, okay, I might have to take my big black mic and go interview him?
Ooh, let me take that big black mic over there and interview. How about Christin Stewart? Christin. I call him Christin. I think I heard Matt Shepard call him Christin, so I think it's Christin Stewart, by the way. I trust him as a play-by-play man calling him Christin. Anyways, I've been impressed by him. He had 6 straight starts that he had made where he reached base at least once. So that was impressive. Prior to Monday, he had reached base in 6 straight games and 6 starts that was for Christin Stewart. So at least drawing a base on ball. So that was impressive out of Christin Stewart. And his OBP has been good thus far with the Tigers. Now, will he hit for power like he did in AAA and in the minors? Tigers need to see that. We need to see that as fans to really jump on the bandwagon, I think, regarding Christin Stewart and what he can do at the major league level going into next season, when I think he will be just concentrated on as a major leaguer. I think he will be a guy that they want to be a starter, a starting left fielder, starting corner outfielder, and they will focus on him being able to do that and rely on him to do that. This is what I was trying to say the whole entire time. Rely on him to be a starting corner outfielder. So if he's going to be that for the Tigers and a consistent starting corner outfielder, well, guess what? He's going to have to produce extra base power, doubles, and home runs. And he did that in the minors. At AAA Toledo, did it tremendously and tremendously consistently. Now, he needs to do it somewhat consistently, at least starting next year. If he doesn't, he might be a bust of a prospect already. So you hope doesn't come to that, because once again, when it comes to Christin Stewart and what he can do for the Tigers moving forward or any major league ball club, it will come down to his power. Is he hitting for power consistently? And the Tigers could use it, and maybe they could then start relying upon Christin Stewart for power. Dewell Lugo, that's another story. Light hitting, middle infielder. I don't trust in him at all. OPS below 700 in the minors. I don't think you can trust in him being able to produce an OPS of even 700 moving forward, which means he's a backup infielder at best, Doc.
Dewell Lugo, backup infielder at best?
At best. And he's a top prospect. The top prospect you got in the J.D. Martinez deal with the Arizona Diamondbacks, he was the most coveted prospect in that package of prospects you got for J.D. Martinez, who might be the runner-up for MVP in the American League this season, and the best all-around hitter in all of baseball right now. And you got Dewell Lugo as your top prospect. How bad was that for Avila and company? It's looking really bad right now, Doc.
All right, Vito, what do we got in the second half of the podcast? We're up against it. We're going to take a break, and then we'll come back with the second half of Tigers Talk. What do you got for me?
Well, let's look at Vito's notebook a little bit more in depth and some other Tigers-related news and notes overall-wise, and we'll do all that in the second half of this week's podcast. And Doc, as you know, one of our fine partners at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network is the Detroit Sports Commission, which has been bringing hundreds and thousands of marquee events to our very region. That is the Metro Detroit area, including national and international amateur sporting events. And to find out about all of the events they are bringing to the Metro Detroit area, please follow the Detroit Sports Commission on Twitter and on Instagram at DET Sports. And make sure to check out their hugely, hugely terrific website at DetroitSports.org. And back here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, I'm your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner and fun, that is the Doc from Doc and Jack. And John, before the break, I had sagged looking at Vito's notebook, and you have something as well to bring up really quick here. And what would that be?
Well, Vito, there's an observation I wanted to make. You did a really good job talking to Dick Trzaskowski. I want to give you credit. I'm looking forward to feature in-depth conversations that you'd have. So before you get into your notebook and things like that, finishing up this podcast, if there was one current Detroit Tiger that you could have a conversation with, maybe 30 minutes or an in-depth conversation, who would it be? And maybe a past Tiger, past, present, living, if there was one that you could sit down and talk baseball with, get a sense of history, who would it be?
Current Tiger Matthew Boyd, former Tiger Brandon Inch. And I say that because Brandon Inch might be on these airwaves in the near future. So we'd love to have him and join us in studio. He might be actually joining us in Sterling Heights in these lovely confines of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network studio.
Nice. Now, I've had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Boyd, so I beat you to it.
And I remember that's why I kind of brought him up, too, because also he seemed like a really nice guy. Obviously, I want to talk to a guy that's willing to give you some conversation material and willing to talk to you and maybe dive a little bit in depth with you. And it seemed like Matthew Boyd was willing to do that with you, not that you guys had a long, in-depth conversation, but I thought he was a nice guy based off of what you talked about with him and how he responded to your questions, too, Doc.
All right, it's time for Vito's Notebook, where Vito gives us some interesting stats, news, and notes regarding the Detroit Tigers and the world of baseball.
So, April 14th through 16th of 2017, what does that signify, you think, Doc? And you're going to be probably reaching.
No clue, buddy. What is it?
So, well, you had no idea, obviously. No. Well, because of the fact that it's something you maybe wouldn't know unless you dug it up, which I did. So April 14th through 16th of 2017 was the last time the Tigers had won a series in Cleveland prior to this past weekend.
Oh.
Think about that. It had been that long since the Tigers had last won a series in Cleveland. So pretty tremendous right there. And the Tigers, the last 2 seasons now against the Tribe, they have finished 6-13 each of the past 2 seasons head-to-head with the Indians. How about that stat right there, too? And the last 2 seasons, the Tigers have been outscored by Terry Francona and company, 226-109. So just demolished and completely annihilated by the Indians the last 2 seasons, really the last 3 as well. Moving on now to Sandy Baez. Now, going into Monday's game, at one point, just to start off here, Sandy Baez, reliever for the Tigers, a young reliever, might be something in the future for the Tigers in their bullpen next season, perhaps as well, come opening day. Baez, he threw 9 2/3 consecutive innings before allowing his first run at the major league level. And then, guess what? The 24-year-old righty allowed 2 runs over 1 2/3 innings Saturday in that 15-0 loss to the Tribe. Christin Stewart, already brought it up, had gone 6 straight games prior to Monday of reaching base at least once. And those 6 games are all 6 games in which he started. So Stewart getting on base to start off his Tigers career. And then there's Jim Adduci. He had a career day Sunday. He recorded 4 runs batted in for the first time in his major league career, with 3 of the RBIs coming on a home run. The lefty, before they had gone 139 games without a 4 RBI game. And the only other time the 33-year-old has recorded more than 2 RBIs in a game came on May 5th, 2017 against the Oakland A's. And I already talked about the other stat as well as part of Vito's notebook. So that concludes Vito's notebook for this week on Tigers Talk.
Well, guess what, Vito? I want to join the party. And Doc...
Ooh, you got a stat.
No, Doc has a notebook too.
Okay.
And I want to share an experience that I had because obviously, you know, Vito, I don't know what you make of me as a podcaster, as
well, I know what, but I'm not going to say it on air right now and embarrass you.
No problem.
Yeah.
But I wonder sometimes what you think of me as a professional psychologist. But part of what makes me really good and talented is that I'm a good listener. I'm a great listener. And sometimes when you're in the press box, now, Vito, to be a great listener, you must be interested in the subject material. So
if you want, when I talk, that's why you don't listen to me. Ever listen to me.
If you want to say something impactful, the doc will listen. So
that makes you a great listener, though? I think that doesn't make you a great listener.
No, I'm a great listener.
Go on with your diatribe.
Yeah, so in the press box, there's obviously reporters and beat reporters, and they're developing relationships. So in the press box, sometimes some dignitaries will kind of stroll through and have conversations with beat writers. So I'm sitting there typing, watching the Tigers, and all of a sudden, a dignitary, I'm not going to reveal who it was, kind of walks next to a beat writer and starts talking. And they're having just a basic conversation, and you can kind of tell that this person was relaying information to the beat writer, and it had to do with Chris Ilitch. And Chris Ilitch, and to share a funny story, obviously, I try to get down to the ballpark 3 hours before the game, and you get a chance to see players work out, you get the stories, you get the access. You got to get there early, prior to the game. Well, obviously, I have 2 young kids, and I can't get down there at 4 o'clock when you have a full practice, and you have a full podcast network, and you have 2 other businesses you're trying to get up and going, and so I'm a busy guy. And so Vito has more access to me than anybody in the world. You should almost be my assistant. But at this point...
Yes, I do. Right, too much access. I see too much stuff going on here.
My wife is like, dude, something going on with you and Vito? He's texting you all the time. He's like, I get a text at like 11:45 and it's Vito. And my wife's like, who's texting you that late? I'm like, honey.
It's Vito, as usual. Hey, I wouldn't let that happen, Andrea, okay?
Yeah.
No monkey business here between Doc and Doc. I'm not into him like that. He's not into me, I think, like that either.
I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, of course, I tag Vito all the time, man. He's great.
He tags me all right. Yeah. I tag him too, by the way, Andrea.
So
anyway.
she's like, you're so disgusting. And so
back on track here, right?
I just raised her insecurity level, and I'm like, dude, I wouldn't cheat on you with a girl. I'm just going to cheat on you with a guy.
Yeah, come on, got to change it up once in a while. Mix it up, right?
Because that really is the ultimate insult, right? If
It
you're
must
like,
be. You cheat on your wife with a man. Well, yeah.
Exactly.
How did we get on this topic, by the way?
No.
A Tiger stock?
I don't know. That's where our mind tends to go.
It's funny, but yes, our heads go to the gutter really quick here.
But in the end, the reason why we got on this story was one of the times I did not go. Of course, who shows up and talks to the media and addresses the media? The owner of the Tigers, Chris Ilitch. And it was photo day, and so that's a weakness on my part. I did not know it was team photo day because I probably would have made my way down there. But I was hanging out with the kids. I got home around 3:34, spent a couple hours with the kids, and then I got down to the ballpark. Only then to discover that, scroll through TweetDeck, and all of a sudden, Chris Ilitch said this, and Chris Ilitch said that, and this dignitary was relaying information to the beat writer. And really what they wanted to emphasize was, and I can share, is that Chris Ilitch, at this point in time, it has made it pretty much known that he's not selling the team, that he's committed, and it was a talking point. It was really interesting to see how it kind of information gets relayed in a certain way from a dignitary to a writer. But it was emphasized that Chris Ilitch wants to be the owner of the Tigers. He wants to see this through. He is committed. Now, the other aspect, if you want to be critical, is he ever going to open up his wallet? Because that's one way to expedite a rebuild is to start paying some athletes and getting some talent. And so the knock against Chris Ilitch is that he might be a little bit tight in the wallet in that he's really looking at the numbers and not really committed, as a billionaire to, put some quality, talented individuals on the field instead of doing it this way. But it was interesting to see how a conversation takes place where information is relayed and then you can hear the talking points. So if you're in the press box, pay attention, observe, turn your head a little bit, see who's walking around, peek into the conversations a little bit because there's some information that gets released. But as always is the case, I go down there 3 hours early, get, stories. The one time I don't, the owner of the Tigers, makes a speech and things like that. But if you really paid attention to it, he was asked, and obviously some of the jokes were, why don't you buy the Lions and things like that. But he was definitely trying to go out there and make the point because he keeps getting asked, are you going to sell the team? Are you interested in being the owner of the Tigers? Being the owner of the Tigers really has a lot of advantages. I mean, you make a lot of money. Comerica Park is beautiful. The Tigers are well run, and they're trying to get back on track financially. Obviously, if someone puts together a $2 billion offer plus, he probably will entertain.
He might not love the Tigers anymore as much. It might be selling them off. Yeah.
And so maybe what the code behind the code would be is that he's waiting to get the team back to winning track because then the valuation of the team will go up from maybe $2 billion to $2.5 billion if they actually become winners, especially with the way sports teams are valued. But it was really interesting to hear a dignitary talk about Chris Ilitch and what some information that he wanted relayed, and that Chris Ilitch is serious about being the owner of the Tigers, and he has a good organization in place. But what level of input does Chris Ilitch really have? I think he's really relying upon the likes of Avila and those that are in charge. And you can tell that Avila kind of right now has the reins of the organization. It's on him to make sure it runs right, the business side, the marketing side, and to put forth the talent on the field. So that was the first edition of the Doc's Notebook, and it was the best one. I think I won.
So you're done, by the way? Are you done finally?
I had one note, and I shared it efficiently, and I think it entertained the masses.
Did I make it a notebook? One note? Part of a notebook? As your notebook? One note? Anyways, so Chris I was saying that it's been fun to watch the Tigers. He thinks people have had fun watching the Tigers this season overall-wise. Then I look at the TV ratings. They're down for Fox Sports Detroit for 97.1 the ticket, and the attendance numbers are deeply down. Do you really believe that?
Well,
as owner speak, you know how we say coach speak when they just pub up a player or the team and how they're playing when they're really not playing well?
He also
I
said
think that's owner speak there.
But he also said they were aware of it. They knew. I mean, if the team's not going to win, people aren't going to watch. I mean, it was not like...
So then how are they more fun to watch when there's nobody watching them?
No.
Because I'm barely even watching them, Doc. I'm a Tigers fan.
I watch
I'm not watching
game.
it.
No,
you're not.
No, the reason is that there's very few games where it's 15-0. They're in the game. They're getting to the 6th, 7th, 8th inning. It's competitive.
And they're losing.
And they lose the game. But they don't have enough talent. I mean, we all knew that, Vito.
Yeah.
So,
okay, I get it. You can admit it that they knew this going into the season. The team wouldn't be good. Well, without saying there's not a lot of talent, which is fine. He doesn't have to say that. But okay, so if they're not as good, you know that. Well, guess what? They're not going to be as fun to watch. How are they as fun to watch if they're not as good? They're not going to be as fun to watch.
He also deflected and said, we are evaluating the system. We are looking at who's going to come up. And obviously, he called it a rebuild. He said that we're in a transitional phase. We're working on bringing the talent. And he feels like Ron Gardenhire is the guy to oversee the operation, making sure the talent development. And you got to remember, there were a lot of guys that kind of made their way through the minors and had some productive seasons in the minors. And it was pretty decent. And, marked by, Brian Pena, the guy who loves you the most.
Yes.
He won himself a title there in the minors. So, they're moving toward a direction of pumping in some more talent. And obviously, they have to get more talent, but I think he's happy seeing that some of the guys that Avila traded for are producing. Some of the young talent that's on the team can have potentially an opportunity. And that's all you can do. Whether it all pans out, that'll determine the fate of Avila. But it was interesting in that the one time the owner speaks during the season, I'm not there.
You weren't there.
Yeah.
You were MIA. And you get there 3 hours before for every single game, and you weren't there for Chris I speaking to the media.
But man, hugging the kids, I'll take that. Every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I got 2 great daughters, man. It's fun.
You do, and a great wife. Now, Ron Gardenhire, a great manager, maybe. Now, exceeding expectations, by the way, if he doesn't get to 100 losses, I think you could say maybe he has exceeded. If that does occur where they don't lose 100 games, you can maybe say the Tigers with Ron Gardenhire in his first year as skipper have exceeded expectations that many fans and media pundits alike had set for the Tigers going into 2018. And you kind of had brought that up before, too, earlier in the first half of this week's podcast. Doc, what do you have to say about that? Do you think you could say that Ron Gardenhire has exceeded expectations if the Tigers don't lose 100 games this season, which more than likely they're not going to lose 100 at this point?
Yeah, I'm okay with Ron Gardenhire. Obviously, we would like him to continue to emphasize analytics, but I think that he's a class manager, and he keeps things light. He's approachable, someone easy to talk to, and maybe we'll have a conversation with him this week. Stay tuned on our airwaves. Maybe we'll try and earn a conversation with the manager, Ron Gardenhire. Before we end, I do want to get a chance to note that the Indians definitely bid a fond farewell to Victor Martinez, and he was definitely affected and moved by it. It was really nice, a video tribute for a guy that played a lot of years in Cleveland. And so Victor Martinez is now in the home stretch, final homestand for him. You and I will catch about half the games, and good for Victor Martinez. He's going to ride out his career, and we hope it's a good week for him.
It's classy what the Indians did for V-Mart over the weekend in Cleveland, a classy tribute to V-Mart. He got something as well, a plaque or something from the Indians, too. That was really cool to see, and what a great classy dude he always has been throughout his whole entire Major League career, and he got choked up. Because of that pregame ceremony, he got choked up, was visibly shaken up by the moment, and all the feels right there from V-Mart, seeing him experience that pregame ceremony and seeing him get emotional and choked up. That was great to see the Indians doing that for V-Mart. And V-Mart, once again, a great dude off the field from what we all know about him, Doc.
Vito, what's on tap this week for the Detroit Tigers? Obviously in a series versus the Twins, and they'll round out 4 games versus the Kansas City Royals, and then they'll start their final road trip of the season.
Yeah, which will take place at Minnesota, by the way, next week. Starting on Tuesday of next week, they play Minnesota. So you have this weekend series with the Royals where I'll be at Saturday and Sunday. Last 2 home regular season games for the Tigers in 2018. How will they fare? Nobody really cares. Does that rhyme? I think it does. Now, we will want to see, though, who is made available to the media to speak with this weekend, because I'll be there, once again, at Comerica Saturday and Sunday. Will I get the chance to get some audio from some players, from Ron Gardenhire? Who knows what will happen, but I will be there for the final 2 home regular season games of the Tigers' 2018 campaign.
All right, Vito, great podcast. You can follow Vito on Twitter at Vito Jerome. Ask him any questions. If you watch a game and there's anything at all that sparks your passion, feel free, 24/7, leave us a voicemail, 248-579-8686. That's 248-579-8686. Get your voice heard worldwide. We have a worldwide audience, not just in Michigan, across the United States and across the pond as well. 248-579-8686. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. We read and interact with everybody that messages us, and thank you so much for tuning in to the latest edition of Tigers Talk.
Rip into me. I want to hear it. I want to hear loud and proud from you guys out there. At the DSP Network, I am Vito Jerome. Adios for now.